You know, when television was first invented, it was supposed to be the world's premier educational device. Now, you know, I don't want to be cynical about television. I think it did play that role to some degree, but really what it turned into was an extension of the theater. People were very concerned for a while that the attention of young people had become intolerably fragmented. But I would say the YouTube culture and the podcast culture actually belies that. Rogan, for example, I mean, his podcasts are 3 hours long. That's long. That's way longer than a news show ever was. It's far longer than the typical documentary. And, you know, services like Netflix have also enabled the development of narratives that span multiple seasons with tremendously complex plot lines. So it isn't obvious to me, it isn't self-evident that attention span fragmentation is the massive issue that people thought it would be, because the technology morphed. And the podcast world is a huge world, and it's really influential for people under 30. People under 30 don't watch mainstream media, news especially. It's like, that's done. Those companies are so done. They can't get a toehold in YouTube. Like, I watched MSNB the other day. They had this little clip about this robot, artificial intelligence, that could manifest fairly accurate human emotions and read them. It was about a 5-minute clip. They put a 30-second ad at the beginning of it that you couldn't skip. It's like it had 12,000 views. Why? Well, they broke a YouTube rule, which is don't make people overpay for content. You get to put a 15-second ad up that you can skip in 5. And if you break that, it's like, no, to hell with you. And so I don't think the mainstream media companies can make the transition to YouTube, because it's truly a different genre. It has different base rules. So one of the rules is don't be glitzy. Who cares about your production values? Make sure the audio is good. But what we want to see is uncut dialogue, because then we know it hasn't been manipulated. And so the people who are influential on YouTube, they have talk shows where there's no editing. You know, there's editing for mistakes and that sort of thing, because no one needs that. But fundamentally, they deliver the straight goods with as little mediation by editors as possible. And so people trust that, as they should, because not only if the interviewers or the guests prefer a conclusion, which is something like, here's how you should think, the viewer gets to experience the thought process that led up to that conclusion, and that means they can decide for themselves. And young people are very canny consumers of visual content. And so these sorts of production tricks that companies like CNN say used to use to impress people in the 1980s have zero impact now, probably a negative impact, because all that glitzy packaging just indicates to the more sophisticated media consumer that they're being sold a bill of goods. The YouTube people, they want it rough and raw.